Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Dallas Cowboys are about to make a move that could change everything, and for once, America's team might actually be doing things the smart way. After years of questionable hiring decisions that left fans scratching their heads and defensive units crumbling under pressure, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones appear to have learned their lesson. The defensive coordinator search currently underway isn't just another typical Cowboys hiring cycle, filled with recycled names and retreads from the retirement circuit. No, this time, something is genuinely different, and the implications could reshape the entire franchise's trajectory for the next decade. Let's be brutally honest for a second. The Cowboys have a history, a well-documented, painfully obvious history of making the absolute wrong calls when it comes to hiring defensive coordinators. Sure, Dan Quinn worked out reasonably well during his tenure, bringing a level of competence and NFL-caliber scheming to a defense that desperately needed it. But let's not pretend the Cowboys have been batting 1,000 in this department. Mike Zimmer's return to Dallas was supposed to be a nostalgic homecoming that would recapture the magic of the glory years. Instead, it felt more like watching your favorite band from high school try to relive their prime. Awkward, out of touch, and ultimately disappointing. And don't even get me started on Matt Eberflus, whose brief stint left more questions than answers, and whose schemes seem better suited for a different era of football entirely. The problem wasn't just that these coaches didn't work out. The problem was how the Cowboys went about hiring them in the first place. The organization had developed a pattern, a predictable, frustrating pattern of gravitating toward older coaches with extensive resumes, prioritizing experience over innovation, familiarity over fresh perspectives. They kept fishing in the same pond, pulling out the same kinds of fish, and then acting shocked when those fish couldn't swim in modern NFL waters. It was the football equivalent of using a flip phone in the age of smartphones and wondering why you couldn't download apps. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. According to multiple reports and statements from Cowboys Executive Vice President Stephen Jones himself, the organization is completely flipping the script this offseason. They're not just looking for a defensive coordinator, they're searching for the right defensive coordinator, and they're willing to cast the widest net imaginable to find him. As of the latest updates, Dallas has interviewed or is in the process of interviewing 9 different candidates for the position. 9 highly qualified, innovative, football-minded coaches who could potentially transform this defense from mediocre to magnificent. Now, here's the kicker that has NFL analysts doing double takes. Every single one of these candidates is under the age of 50. Let that sink in for a moment. Every single one. For a franchise that has historically treated the defensive coordinator position like a retirement home for coaches on their farewell tours, this represents a seismic philosophical shift. The list of interviewees reads like a who's who of the NFL's brightest young defensive minds. Dennard Wilson, Aaron Glenn, Ejiro Evero, Jonathan Gannon, Jim Leonhard, Charlie Bullen, DeMarcus Covington, Christian Parker, and Zach Orr. These aren't your grandfather's coaching candidates. These are innovative, adaptable, modern football thinkers who understand that the game in 2026 looks drastically different than it did even 5 years ago. To truly appreciate how dramatic this shift is, you need to understand the Cowboys' recent history of defensive coordinator hires. R.J. Ochoa from Blogging the Boys did everyone a favor by compiling the ages of recent Cowboys defensive hires and candidates, and the numbers are absolutely staggering. When the Cowboys brought Mike Zimmer back in 2024, he was 67 years old. 67. Ron Rivera, who was considered for the role, was 62 in 2024. Rex Ryan, another name that floated around Cowboys circles at various points, was 61. Matt Eberflus was 55 when he was involved with the organization. Even Dan Quinn, who ended up being the youngest of the bunch when hired in 2021, was already 50 years old. Going further back, Mike Nolan was 60 when Dallas hired him alongside Mike McCarthy. The pattern is undeniable. The Cowboys had become the NFL's equivalent of that nightclub that only plays hits from the 80s. Sure, some people might enjoy the nostalgia, but you're never going to attract the young, energetic crowd that actually packs venues and creates electric atmospheres. The franchise had essentially been hiring coaches who learned their defensive philosophies during administrations that predated the modern passing revolution, the evolution of mobile quarterbacks, and the analytical movement that has transformed how smart teams approach football. But why does age matter so much? It's not about ageism or disrespecting the wisdom that comes with experience. It's about recognizing that football, like every other industry, evolves. The coaches who succeed in today's NFL are the ones who can adapt to constant change, who understand analytics, who can communicate with players who grew up in completely different cultural contexts, and who aren't so set in their ways that they can't incorporate new ideas. Younger coaches, particularly those in their 30s and 40s, are digital natives in the football sense. They've grown up studying modern offenses, understanding how to counteract the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals, not trying to figure out how to stop the run-heavy attacks of the 1980s. Stephen Jones himself has been remarkably candid about the process, which in itself represents a refreshing change from the Cowboys' typically guarded approach to personnel decisions. In an interview with DallasCowboys.com, Jones explained the organization's methodology. "I think we're in the initial run. We're going to cast a wide net, whether it's half a dozen, 10, 12 coaches. When it's all said and done, I don't know what the number will be, but then we'll narrow it down. We're already starting to narrow it down, and we'll start to bring guys in for in-person interviews. Some of the guys that we felt were guys that would fit." That phrase, guys that would fit, is absolutely critical. The Cowboys aren't just looking for the best defensive coordinator in a vacuum. They're searching for someone who fits their specific needs, their personnel, their organizational culture, and their vision for what this defense should become. Jones elaborated on this point, saying, "The guys who fit what we want to be as a defense, the identity that we want to have, that fit with the personnel that we have on the defensive side of the ball, because we think we have a lot of good pieces in place. We know we have to improve not only from a coaching staff standpoint, we also need to improve from a personnel standpoint." So all that goes into the mix and the equation, and I think we're making good progress. This represents mature, thoughtful organizational thinking. The Cowboys are acknowledging that they have talent on defense, guys like Micah Parsons, Darren Bland, and others who have shown genuine star potential, but they need a coordinator who can maximize that talent while also being realistic about roster deficiencies. They need someone who can scheme around weaknesses, develop young players, and create a defensive identity that opponents actually fear rather than viewing as a guaranteed 30 points per game. According to multiple sources, including Dallas media personality Bobby Belt, two names have emerged as frontrunners in this race: Jim Leonhard and Jonathan Gannon. Both coaches are 43 years old, placing them squarely in that sweet spot of having enough experience to command respect, while still being young enough to relate to modern players and modern football. But these two candidates represent somewhat different philosophical approaches, and the choice between them could define the Cowboys' defensive identity for years to come. Jim Leonhard is perhaps the more familiar name to hardcore NFL fans. His journey through football reads like a classic underdog story, the kind that Disney would option for a heartwarming sports movie if they weren't so busy making superhero content. Leonhard wasn't some five-star recruit who had his pick of college programs. He worked his way up through the University of Wisconsin, eventually becoming a quality NFL safety who played for multiple teams over a decade-long career. After retiring as a player, he transitioned into coaching, serving as Wisconsin's defensive coordinator before making the jump to the NFL with the Denver Broncos. Here's what makes Leonhard so intriguing. Denver had one of the best defenses in the entire NFL this past season. We're not talking about a decent unit or a middle-of-the-pack group. We're talking about a legitimate, elite, game-changing defense that gave offensive coordinators nightmares. Leonhard's schemes were creative, adaptable, and most importantly, effective against the modern NFL's most dangerous offensive weapons. He knows how to utilize diverse personnel packages, how to disguise coverages, how to generate pressure without necessarily blitzing, and how to put players in positions to make plays. His defensive backs coaching background means he intimately understands coverage concepts, which is absolutely critical in today's passing-dominated league. Beyond the X's and O's, Leonhard brings something arguably even more valuable: the right personality and cultural fit. Multiple sources have indicated that his coaching style meshes well with what new offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer is trying to build in Dallas. The Cowboys appear to be undergoing a genuine cultural transformation, moving away from the dysfunction and drama that has plagued the franchise for years toward a more professional, buttoned-up operation. Leonhard's approach, demanding but fair, innovative but grounded, intense but not abrasive, seems tailor-made for this new direction. Jonathan Gannon, meanwhile, represents a different but equally compelling option. Gannon's coaching journey took him from student assistant positions all the way to becoming the Arizona Cardinals head coach, with several significant stops along the way. He served as the Philadelphia Eagles' defensive coordinator, where he helped guide that defense through a successful period. His defensive backs coaching with the Indianapolis Colts earned him widespread respect around the league. Gannon is a defensive specialist through and through, someone who has spent his entire coaching career focused on that side of the ball. What makes Gannon particularly interesting for the Cowboys is his philosophical ties to both Mike Zimmer and Matt Eberflus. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't we just spend several paragraphs explaining why the Cowboys needed to move away from that older coaching tree? Yes, but here's the nuance that makes Gannon such a fascinating candidate. He represents the best of both worlds. He learned from those established coaches, understands their defensive principles and philosophies, but he's young and innovative enough to adapt and modernize those concepts for today's NFL. He could theoretically maintain some carryover and continuity from previous Cowboys defensive schemes while also bringing his own fresh ideas and adjustments. Think of it this way. Gannon is like a chef who trained under classical French masters, but then traveled the world, learned Asian fusion techniques, experimented with molecular gastronomy, and ultimately created his own unique culinary style that honors tradition while embracing innovation. He's not a complete tear-down and rebuild candidate, which could be valuable given that the Cowboys do have defensive talent on the roster. Players wouldn't have to learn an entirely new language. They'd just be learning new dialects of a language they already partially speak. However, the Cowboys face a significant challenge that could complicate their methodical hiring process: time. While Stephen Jones said they haven't set a firm deadline and want to focus on getting the hire right rather than rushing into a decision, the reality is that other teams are circling these same candidates like sharks sensing blood in the water. The New York Giants, fresh off hiring former Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald. They hired Brian Daboll previously and are now looking at defensive coordinator options, according to reports from 105.3. The Fan in Dallas, the Giants are seriously considering Jim Leonhard for their defensive coordinator position, and they reportedly feel very confident about their chances of landing him. This creates a fascinating chess match. The Cowboys want to be thorough, want to interview multiple candidates, want to make sure they're making the absolute right choice. But every day they wait is another day that Jim Leonhard or Jonathan Gannon or one of the other top candidates could get snatched up by another organization. It's the classic dilemma of trying to be careful and methodical while also recognizing that the best options won't wait around forever. Several NFL teams fired their head coaches this offseason, and those new head coaches are bringing in their own staffs. Additionally, multiple teams are looking specifically for defensive coordinator upgrades, meaning the competition for top-tier defensive coaching talent is absolutely fierce. Beyond Leonhard and Gannon, the Cowboys list includes several other intriguing names that deserve attention. Christian Parker and Zach Orr, both in their early 30s, represent the absolute cutting edge of young coaching talent. Parker's 33, Orr is 34, and both have garnered significant attention around the league for their innovative approaches and ability to connect with players. While they might be considered long shots compared to Leonhard and Gannon, don't be surprised if one or both of these young coaches land significant positions either with Dallas or elsewhere very soon. The NFL has increasingly embraced younger coaches, recognizing that fresh perspectives and modern approaches often translate to competitive advantages. What's particularly encouraging about the Cowboys process is the acknowledgement from Stephen Jones that this isn't just about coaching. He specifically mentioned that improvements are needed both from a coaching standpoint and a personnel standpoint. This suggests the organization understands that hiring the right coordinator is only part of the equation. They'll also need to address roster deficiencies, potentially through free agency and the draft, to give whoever they hire the tools necessary to succeed. The defensive coordinator position in Dallas comes with unique challenges that candidates must understand going in. This isn't just any NFL defense, it's America's team's defense, which means every decision will be scrutinized by national media, passionate fans, and critics waiting for any opportunity to pounce on failures. The coordinator will be working for Jerry Jones, one of the most hands-on owners in professional sports history, someone who isn't shy about voicing opinions or inserting himself into football operations. The pressure is immense, the expectations are sky high, and the margin for error is razor thin. But the position also comes with significant advantages. The Cowboys have genuine defensive talent, particularly in Micah Parsons, who might be the most disruptive defensive player in the entire NFL when healthy and utilized correctly. Darren Bland emerged as a legitimate star cornerback, capable of changing games with his ball skills and coverage ability. The roster isn't barren. It's a foundation that a smart coordinator could absolutely build upon. Additionally, the Cowboys have resources, both financial flexibility to add pieces and organizational infrastructure to support coaching staffs. This isn't a rebuilding situation where a coordinator has to work miracles with practice squad players. This is a talented team that underachieved defensively and needs better scheming, development, and game planning. The broader context of this hiring reveals something potentially transformative about the Cowboys organization. For years, decades really, the franchise has been criticized for living in the past, for making decisions based on nostalgia rather than forward-thinking strategy, for prioritizing names over actual fit and potential. The jokes about Jerry Jones and his old-school approach have been comedy staples for sports talk shows and internet memes. But this defensive coordinator search suggests genuine organizational growth. The willingness to interview 9 candidates, all under 50, all representing modern defensive thinking, indicates that maybe, just maybe, the Cowboys are finally ready to join the contemporary NFL rather than constantly trying to recreate the 1990s dynasty. Stephen Jones's comments about casting a wide net and not rushing the process also reflect maturity that hasn't always characterized Cowboys' decision-making. In previous years, the team often found itself in reactive modes, firing coordinators late and then scrambling to fill positions before other teams grabbed the best available candidates. This time, they moved decisively by dismissing Matt Eberflus relatively quickly, giving themselves maximum flexibility and time to conduct a proper search. That's smart organizational management, the kind of process-oriented thinking that separates well-run franchises from dysfunctional ones. The question now becomes, will the Cowboys actually follow through? Will they resist the temptation to fall back on familiar names and comfortable choices? Will they have the courage to hire someone who might challenge conventional wisdom, who might implement schemes that look different from traditional Cowboys defenses, who might prioritize analytics and modern metrics over gut feelings and outdated defensive philosophies? The early signs are encouraging, but Cowboys fans have been burned before by organizational promises that didn't materialize into actual change. If Dallas does hire someone like Jim Leonhard or Jonathan Gannon, or even takes a bigger swing on someone like Christian Parker or Zach Orr, it could signal the beginning of a genuine new era. Combined with Brian Schottenheimer's promotion to offensive coordinator, the Cowboys could be building something special. A young, innovative, forward-thinking coaching staff that can maximize the talents of players like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and others, while developing the next generation of Cowboys stars. The potential is absolutely tantalizing. But potential means nothing without execution. The Cowboys have had potential for years and squandered it with poor coaching decisions, questionable personnel moves, and an organizational culture that sometimes seemed more focused on marketing and brand management than actually winning championships. This defensive coordinator hire won't fix everything wrong with the franchise. It won't magically erase years of playoff disappointments or transform ownership's sometimes meddlesome approach to football operations, but it could be an important step, maybe even a crucial step toward building something sustainable and successful. The next few weeks will be absolutely critical as the Cowboys narrow their candidate pool and begin bringing coordinators to Dallas for in-person interviews. We'll learn a tremendous amount about the organization's true priorities and vision. Will they choose the safe option, someone with extensive coordinator experience who represents a known quantity? Or will they take a calculated risk on someone younger, someone innovative, someone who might fail spectacularly but could also elevate this defense to heights the franchise hasn't seen in decades? Cowboys fans deserve answers. They deserve an organization that's genuinely committed to winning, that's willing to make tough decisions and embrace necessary changes even when those changes feel uncomfortable or uncertain. They deserve a defensive coordinator who can scheme effectively against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, not someone whose defensive philosophy peaked when Terry Bradshaw was throwing passes. They deserve coaches who can develop young players, adjust in-game when initial plans aren't working, and create a culture of accountability and excellence. The fact that all 9 candidates are under 50 years old is genuinely encouraging. It suggests the Cowboys understand that modern problems require modern solutions, that defending today's NFL offenses requires coaches who live and breathe contemporary football rather than reminiscing about how things used to be. It suggests organizational growth, maturity, and a willingness to evolve. But suggestions mean nothing without results. The Cowboys need to actually hire one of these younger, innovative coaches and then give him the resources, support, and patience necessary to succeed. So what happens next? The Cowboys will continue their interview process, narrowing down candidates and ultimately making their selection. Whenever that announcement comes, whether it's Jim Leonhard bringing his Denver defensive magic to Dallas, Jonathan Gannon providing continuity with innovation, or some other candidate we haven't fully considered, it will tell us everything we need to know about whether this franchise is truly ready to change or if this is just another false dawn in a long series of disappointing organizational decisions. One thing is certain, Cowboys Nation will be watching. Millions of passionate fans who have suffered through years of playoff disappointments, defensive collapses, and unfulfilled potential will be analyzing every word of the press conference, scrutinizing every detail of the new coordinator's philosophy, and hoping, desperately hoping, that this time, finally, the Cowboys got it right. What do you think, Cowboys fans? Who should Dallas hire as their next defensive coordinator? Is Jim Leonhard the answer with his proven track record of elite defense in Denver? Should Jonathan Gannon get the nod with his connections to previous Cowboys schemes, but with a modern twist? Or should the Cowboys take a bigger risk on someone like Christian Parker or Zach Orr, who could represent the absolute cutting edge of defensive innovation? Drop your thoughts in the comment section right now. And listen, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Cowboys defensive coordinator search and want to stay updated on every development, every rumor, every breaking news story about America's team, make sure you smash that like button, drop a comment with your predictions, and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you never miss a single update. The Cowboys are making moves that could define the next decade of this franchise, and you don't want to be left behind. Let's talk football, Cowboys family.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.